Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Parent's Guide, the keys to unlocking good behavior with positive behavior support. For years, positive behavior support was a process for improving behavior thought to be only used at school. Some parents may have heard of it, but maybe they were never really invited to learn, implement, or put into practice at home the strategies that were being used at school. So today, we'll go ahead and talk about working collaboratively with your child's IEP team, family members, and anyone who interacts with your child on how to observe, record data, evaluate, strategize, develop, and put into place a plan for improving behavior and your family's overall quality of life. So my name is Christine Goulburn. I'm a special needs mom, advocate, and the founder of Sensory Friends. It's a website I run online. I promote inclusion. I believe in presuming competence in all children, regardless of their special needs. And I believe that the positive behavior support process can help to improve behavior in all children, with or without special needs, and across all ages. We are a blended family of 4. These are my boys. To the left is Tiki. To the right is Richie. My husband and I, Kirk, his name is Kirk, and I've been married for 10 years. And together we have a 15-year-old son named Tiki, who is kind and a caring brother, also a talented athlete. And he's a caring brother to his brother, Richie, who's on the right there. We also have a daughter named Samantha and a wonderful son-in-law named Phil, who've made us glam parents to Charlotte, who's 4 years old, and Oliver, who's almost a year old. Just to give you a little background about us and who we are. That's me with the grandchildren. And believe it or not, we use the positive behavior support process with them as well. These are all the men in my life. To the left is my son, Richie, who's the focus person of this presentation. Then it comes my brother, then my son, Tiki, and then my husband, Kirk. Richie, of course, is the star and focus person of this presentation today. He's a 19-year-old teen who is funny, charming, handsome, incredibly intelligent, and he happens to have autism. Richie uses mainly pointing, gestures, and some language to communicate with us and others. We've also started helping him to spell to communicate. He's incredibly smart, spells larger words than I can. But our family has experienced many changes over the years, some traditional, some challenging, and some just plain right extraordinary. We had some very dark times. Richie had started to engage in self-slapping. This could go anywhere from 30 to 120 slaps a minute. He also hit, scratched, bit, punched, kicked, slapped, and headbutt us. He would also punch the walls, bang his head against the wall, break glass. It got to the point where we couldn't do things as a family anymore. I would end up staying behind with Richie because he couldn't participate in community events or anything outside the home. Our quality of life as a family was pretty much at zero. There was a point where we were close to considering group home placement for Richie, but thankfully using the positive behavior support process saved us as a family. Today, Richie's doing great. Challenging behavior is at an all-time low. We are still using our plan to get through this and continue down our path for Richie's learning and improving his communication. It's important to know that Richie's behavior doesn't define who he is as a person. Our kids excel when we have patience, love, and have high expectations for them. So what is positive behavior support? What comes to mind when you hear the phrase? Often the term PBS, which is usually used, can be mistaken and misunderstood by so many. So we'll dispel some of the myths and review the facts. PBS, of course, is not a television station. In this circumstance, it is an evidence-based behavior intervention used for understanding why behavior is happening, replacing challenging behavior with new life skills, and improving the overall quality of life for the focus child and the family. The PBS is not something that has to only be practiced at school. In fact, for the positive behavior support plan to work at its best, it has to be used across all settings. So at school, at home, during outings, and with people who are engaging in all activities. So it doesn't just work with children with special needs either. It can work across all children with or without special needs. They're going to work with children at any age, from toddlers to teenagers and beyond. While using the positive behavior support process works best when led by a behavior analyst, it can be practiced and started by families, parents, and school IEP teams working together on developing and putting the plan in place at home. That's how we had to do it the first time around when we used it. Um, we had started it pretty much at home and then worked with Richie's school to get everyone involved. And it's important to remember that the positive behavior support process isn't something that just begins and ends. It's ongoing because our kids' behavior and learning needs are constantly changing. So it's important to know that all challenging behaviors serve a purpose. They're useful to the focused person, right? For Richie, they certainly were. We hear the phrase, he hit me for no reason, or she pinches herself for no reason at all. But there's always a reason behind every behavior. Children have these behaviors to either avoid or get something. Oftentimes, these very behaviors are reinforced by their environments or the people around them. I know that when it came to Richie, we were reinforcing his behaviors all the time. That's how come they got so bad. So today we're going to review this process. We're going to talk about who needs to be involved in the positive behavior support process, what kind of data do we need, and how do we gather that information, and how to review the information we've collected. How do we develop a plan? What do we need to do to put the plan in place? And how do we manage the plan so improvement and learning continues? The first thing we needed to do was to think about who we needed to be involved in the PBS process. We needed to develop a team. And this team should include everyone who spends time with and knows Richie. So where does Richie spend a lot of his time and with who? We created a list of people who work closely with Richie and who was involved in his everyday life. This would be the positive behavior support team. So gathering and collecting data. Since the only person who knows 100% why the behaviors observed are happening is Richie, and it's even harder because Richie is non-reliably speaking. He has some language, but it's not reliable because, of course, he has echolalia. And so he repeats a great deal of what anyone else says. We're left with having to guess or hypothesize why these behaviors are happening. So the first thing we did before collecting data was to talk about the most important behaviors to address first. For us, the first thing was sleep. Richie wasn't sleeping, which meant we weren't. The second was self-injury. Richie was slapping his face, head, and stomach all day long. The third was aggression. Richie would hit, kick, bite, or punch us when he became frustrated. Fourth was property destruction. Richie would hit or punch the wall, sometimes making holes, breaking picture frames, or throwing things. So one of the first things we needed to complete was an FBA, or functional behavioral assessment form. This form helps us to identify behavior across all settings. We get to find out what Richie's interests are, who does he enjoy being around or not, what does he like doing, and just importantly, what he doesn't like. And the forms that are mentioned or featured in this presentation are also going to be available. So I'll share those as well. And everything we used, I will be sharing. And so the ABC form, which is the antecedent behavior and consequence form, records what took place before, during, and after a behavior takes place. So we get to review behaviors through a larger and clearer lens. We were able to make sure that all forms were consistently used at our home, at Richie's dad's home, and at school. So for a couple of weeks, excuse me, you may not have to do this all day long. You may not have to do this that long, but you can decide as a team how much time is needed for recording data just for their first review meeting. As a tip, I had multiple copies of the ABC form we used throughout the home because at the time, Richie's behavior was so frequent and quick. I needed to make it easy as possible for recording data. And I like to make sure that I recorded it as it happened or immediately after it happened, because that's where I was going to have the best kind of data to review. Because I know that if I didn't record it then, I would forget it. The PBS quality of life form, these forms help us to think about our kids and their independent living skills and other abilities in ways we haven't thought of, or at least not for a while. So this is the data daily collection that we use. This was one of the first forms we used, and it's important to note that they change over time. This is the one we currently most use today, for recording data. As time passes and depending on behavioral changes and trends, we needed to change the type of data we collected. So over the years, our forms for data collection changed just as much as we expected Richie's behavior to change. So these sheets were ones we needed to use. And in fact, this one that's currently on the screen, we need to update as well, because thankfully Richie's behavior has improved and he's hardly engaging in any of these behaviors again. So we're thinking about changing this particular form from a scatter plot to something less comprehensive. We'll always collect data because we're interested in improving Richie's quality of life. So while we may be changing how we collect data, we'll always collect data to help Richie to continually learn new skills and address new challenging behavior. So in this form, you'll note that we collect words Richie is learning to use, both unprompted and prompted. We keep a ongoing list of words he's using appropriately and work to expand his expressive language. So we also keep track of his sleep habits. You'll notice that on the form on the bottom there. Because when he goes to sleep, we want to keep track of when he goes to sleep, how many times he wakes up a night, how many hours sleep he's getting each night as well. Because the number of times he gets up at night has also decreased dramatically. But this back page, I kind of don't want to change at all because I like keeping track of his and capturing the progress he's making. So analyzing data and goal setting. We needed to learn how often these behaviors took place, what days, what times of day they occurred. This would help to identify patterns. We also want to make sure that we capture how long the behavior took place. What was the intensity? Was it light, medium, or intense? In other words, did his aggression towards others break skin? Or when he hit the wall, was it lightly or did he break something? If he's hitting himself, is he doing it lightly or is he leaving marks on his body? This is important behavior to capture because each behavior serves a purpose. And for Richie, it was up to us to collect information for understanding why he did these things. What was causing or triggering it? Was the cause environmental? So in other words, noise, sights, textures, location, or even the presence of a certain person or animal? Or was it internal? Was he dealing with a headache, side effects from change in medication, or starting up a new one? Or was it caused simply by classic boredom? I can't tell you how often we figured out that this was the case for him. Anyone would get pissed off if they know their ABCs and it's being brought up over and over again. So how could we replace those behaviors with something more functional? Could we improve his communication skills, teach him a new life skill? Could we expand on any existing skills he already has? So these were the types of things that we're looking for and evaluating and assessing when we're collecting data. So what did we learn? After the team, we met and reviewed all of our collected data after we all collected everything. We learned so much. And this is an example of some of the things we learned, which you see on the screen here. Richie's behavior was typically the same response for all triggers. We were able to identify the many triggers we knew happened before the behavior occurred, how he reacted, and more importantly, how we reacted. So what happened after the behavior and what we learned was that we were, for the most part, unknowingly reinforcing Richie's behavior, which is why we kept seeing a steady increase in self-slapping, aggression towards others, and his destruction of property, banging and hitting the walls. We were taking a reactive approach to dealing with Richie's behavior as opposed to a proactive one. And that was one of the biggest mistakes we had started learning. But this was typically what we had been seeing in the patterns that we discovered. So if we took an item away, a desired item from Richie, so when Richie is told to put his iPad away, he would moan at first, kind of like that warning, pace back and forth, make some loud shrieking sounds, and then we would see either aggression, self-injury, or property destruction. And what did we do? Well, we might remove the item for just a few minutes, ask him to ask for it politely, and then return it. But this became just a pattern of behavior. We weren't solving anything. So this is something that we had to really, really look at and figure out how we were going to change that up. So we needed to brainstorm strategies, right? After having all of this information about Richie's behavior, what was causing it, how he reacts, and how we react, and what happens after, we needed to talk strategy. So what were we as a team going to do about the behavior before it took place? What replacement behaviors could we teach Richie? And how are we going to manage our plan of strategies and who would be accountable, right? Because that's part of the process. It's being proactive, teaching, and then managing the PBS plan. So the data helps us to brainstorm and come up with strategies that about how we can prevent, teach replacement behavior, or new behavior skills, and being cautious about how we respond to all behavior. So for a proactive strategy, one example recently used was getting ahead of Richie's pattern of behavior of hitting the wall while watching TV. So every time we brought him downstairs from his room in the morning, let him unwind a little bit, lay him down on the sofa, he would immediately hit the wall. And that may have been because he probably wanted a different change in what he was watching. This became his responsive communication behavior. So before bringing him downstairs in the morning, I would already have moved the sofa a few feet away from the wall so he couldn't hit it. We did this for a while, and then after a while moved it back and had no issues, but we were being proactive. Now for a replacement behavior example, we noticed that every time Richie wanted to go for a walk or a car ride, he would say, shock. We had no idea for a while what this meant. And for a time, he would slap himself, hit the wall or one of us until we figured it out. I started to, anytime I want Richie to repeat something, a word I'm trying to teach him, I would tap my chin so that I would get him to just look at my lips instead of saying, look at me, because after a while, sometimes that gets annoying for the person. I would just tap on my chin. He would automatically look at my lips and I would say the word walk. And then he started repeating it. So Richie could repeat most words if we did this, which turned out to really help with expanding his vocabulary. So if he said the word walk with no behavior, we took him for a walk immediately. If he engaged in any junk behavior or anything undesirable, we ignored it and we went nowhere. But if after 10 minutes he's calmed down and is able to repeat the word, we will gladly go for that walk. So today he not only asks for the walk at his usual time, he now extended his request to include going to the swings and at the corner park. So for management strategies example, I have to say, of course, guys, I'm human, and like any other parent or teacher, when tired, and if I'm not feeling well or having a bad day or anything else that can alter my mood, Richie, like many of our brilliant kids, is intuitive to my behavior, feelings, and more importantly, reactions. So I have made mistakes, and one of the strategies I have in place is to have my husband check me when I'm out of sorts. If I'm bathing Richie, sometimes he'll throw a dripping wet washcloth at me, sometimes as a joke, sometimes because he senses my frustration. If I don't have the foresight to remain calm or step away and take a moment, my husband will come in and say, okay, I'll finish up in here. Go take a minute. Our reaction to our kids' behavior will determine the path they're going to take. Most definitely. They're smart. They pick up on our cues immediately. So will the behavior cease or escalate? And that's something we have to think about all the time when we're interacting with our kids, because reviewing the plan to make updates is also important. The objective is positive change, right? So having the same action plan for things that have been mastered or improved is not much of a working plan. We have to constantly change with our kids. The PBS plan is a living document, and that changes with our developing children and changing family situations. So putting the plan in place. In order for us to do our best with using the plan with fidelity, meaning we're going to really be serious about practicing this across all settings, we had our behavior team go to Richie's school, Richie's dad house, and basically train anyone who works with and interacted with Richie every day. We also kept an ongoing email thread for all team members so that we're all updated at the same time, and we tried to use the same thread so that we can always refer to anything we needed to. We also wanted to make sure that everyone felt supported by making sure everyone had trained on how to deal with Richie's behavior, so we weren't reinforcing it, so that not responding right away, and that we're not responding right away to junk behavior. But we also shared tips and successful strategies that works for any one of us at any given time. Our behavior analysts would often conduct fidelity checks to make sure we're all on the same page and keeping the plan in place, because we're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall out, and that's fine, and that's normal. We get right back onto track and keep it moving. If we started to see behaviors develop, worsen, or any changes that were undesirable, we checked with other team members, especially if you shared custody like we do. Check with other family members and the school to see if trends are taking place anywhere else. Then keep an ongoing dialogue for shared ideas on how to deal with it or if any changes need to be made in the plan. Managing the positive behavior support plan. So we want to make sure we're doing all three of these things because continuing to collect data is key for Richie's continuous improvement. If I see him expanding on a skill he's learned or trying something new successfully, I document it. If there's a hiccup in his routine, or if we see any of the old behaviors start to come back, I document it. If the school sends home a positive note, I document it. This helps me to create a timeline of progress for Richie. It also makes it easier for me to identify any possible reasons for maybe a decline in his behavior or dip in his behavior that we may see or progress. So I use lots of different forms for that. I'll be sharing that as well. I use a check session list. So I'll check that. I'll be making sure to share that. We review the plan often. I look at the plan often. So especially if Richie is learning new skills that I want to keep track of, if he's exhibiting different patterns of behavior, if any changes need to be made, I email other team members so that we can discuss my ideas and ask for their opinions. We want to make sure that we support all team members. I made a lot of useful communication pictures, a conversation book, mostly with our kids. Oftentimes, they don't have the ability to really interact with others in the same way many of us are able to have a simple conversation. So a conversation book is a picture book of everything about your son or daughter. It starts with them being able to introduce. So one side may say, "Hi, my name is Richie. I'm 19. I go to this school. I like doing this. What's your name? Do you have any brothers and sisters?" Things like that. So the person who's reading it is really engaging in an actual nice conversation with that young man or daughter or child. And because they don't necessarily have that experience, we can give that to them by creating a conversation book. I also created schedule boards that makes Richie's day-to-day routine easier for him. I shared all this information that I made with his father and the IEP team because all team members need to know what's working for us at home and with others in different settings. So we keep those lines of communication open for sharing information and resources. We want to make sure that there's consistency across all settings. This was a fun thing for us to do, planning alternative tomorrows with hope, the PATH process. And this is person-centered planning. We used the PATH process and it was fun, productive, and an enlightening experience. After having crafted a positive behavior support plan that proved to be effective and successful for our family, we wanted to keep the learning momentum going for Richie. So the PATH process takes the positive behavior support, individual education plan, and individual plan for education, the IPE, process to another level. We're using elements of all Richie's plans to create one that helps us to visualize the possibilities for Richie's future as limitless, which was the best part. And then how can we make it possible? We look at the who, what, when, where, and why. The meeting is typically facilitated by one person who documents things and another who helps by taking notes. And all members of the IEP behavior and behavior team and anyone involved in Richie's life is invited to participate either in person or participate by contributing information by email. We use collected data. We identify strengths, needs, and areas of improvement. We share known resources, strategies, and think about where we want to see Richie at our end goal. We basically map out a plan for Richie's future with benchmarks and milestones that help us to make Richie's end goals become a reality. Our first steps was to address the immediate barrier to any new progress, and that was Richie's challenging behavior. We need to make it manageable so we could teach. Next, it was all about improving communication. What could we teach or what tools could we help Richie make his needs and thoughts known? We use pictures, spelling to communicate, and work on extending the words he uses daily by making him repeat them. If I know what he wants through his gestures, then he's going to need to say it. And then it was about expanding existing skills, recycling, laundry, sorting, etc. We want Richie to find an effective way or ways to communicate with us and others. We want him to live as independently as possible, maybe with roommates or supported living. We want Richie to have friends, date, socialize. We want him to have a life we all have and aspire, participate in the community, vote, volunteer, play an instrument, which, by the way, we found out through this process that he does like the guitar. We want Richie to have a job and enjoy what he does. We want him to live a life he wants in order to be happy. So this is a wonderful, and by the way, I have a blog that captures my entire experience using the positive behavior support in greater depth. And I also have a blog that talks about this particular person-centered planning experience. So please feel free to visit sensoryfriends.com to view that. Now, this is the fun form that I love. It's a session checklist. It's something I use to capture Richie's skills, and it's constantly changing. Because a positive behavior support plan is not just about addressing challenging behavior. It's about teaching new skills and expanding on existing ones. So improving Richie's overall quality of life means we have to find ways to allow him to express himself, communicate wants, needs, dislikes, interests. We have to allow him to be completely autonomous, make choices and decisions, because we need to talk to him and not around him. And we need him to feel included. And we always want to presume competence. Our kids know more than we suspect. I know that you all feel that way. One of the things we discovered was Richie was bored. We started assigning him easy tasks to do, taking out the garbage, recycling bottles and plastics, doing laundry, picking out his own clothes, and more. Richie has gotten great at mastering some tasks, and when he does, we add new ones or expand the existing ones. Richie has a growing list of chores he does daily. We discovered he likes to play the guitar, and he likes classic rock. He enjoys wearing military wear. He loves to play, hang with us, and he likes to learn. He loves to learn. His day is packed with chores, fun, learning, and different activities throughout the day. And one of the things that help us track what he's doing is this session checklist, just to help track these activities, what he masters, and what new tasks we can add for him to learn. So as Richie learns new things, the document changes to meet the needs of his interest and his learning needs. So, my fellow parents, some important things that I really want you to remember. Please trust your instincts as a parent. If you're not comfortable with a strategy, or you don't see improvement in behavior, or behavior seems to be getting worse, call for a team review to tweak the plan of action. You're a valuable member of the team and the most insightful person with information on your child or teen. So one thing that's so important is please don't allow anyone to rob you of your hope. People often confuse hope with denial. If you believe your son and daughter can achieve a task or learn a new skill, you proceed with that thinking. Just try to maintain an open mind on views and ideas for how to get your child there. Try not to get discouraged if your team begins to dwindle and slack off on collecting data or implementing the plan, because that happened to me. It will happen. Don't worry. You just keep the lines of communication going. Keep doing what you're doing. Try to offer support and keep a positive and open door policy for offering help and shared resources. That's the best you can do. And please know that doing your best is always good enough. Lastly, remember you're going to make mistakes, and that is okay. I made mistakes all the time. I had to take a step back. I lose patience. I experience tiredness, and I have forgotten to record data. It's going to happen, and it's all right. You'll get back on track and just pick up where you left off. For our esteemed professionals, it's important for therapists and professionals to know, to make a parent feel as if they're an actual team member. Because as parents, you know you're the experts. We know that. But we have valuable information to contribute to. So treating us as equal partners, asking for our input, and not just answering routine questionnaires, asking us to participate in strategizing or idea processes helps to eliminate feelings of inadequacy or inferiority. Making us feel meaningfully involved builds trust and establishes productive partnerships. Honesty is also important. We know that you're human too, and it's okay to say you look into something you don't have the answer to. I had a therapist who, when I had a hard question, chose to reply with heavy jargon so that I would lose the thread in our conversation, in hopes that I wouldn't ask any more questions. I knew he didn't know the answer, and as a result, I didn't trust him. It's difficult, but it's also important to try to attune your expertise to the needs of the family. Parents trust their cultural teachings, their understanding of their child's learning styles, and maternal and paternal instincts when it comes to their kids. So if after 3 months, and this is not to say you should wait this long, data is not showing that a strategy is, or data is showing that a strategy is ineffective for dealing with a challenging behavior, please try not to dismiss a parent's concern by saying things like, this works if you're sticking to the plan, or this is based on years of research and evidence-based practices. While that may be the case, that fidelity may be lacking, it's important to be flexible and think together as a team about strategies that everyone believes in, agrees with, and is willing to do. Communication within the team is crucial. Changes in routines, medication, family dynamics, all this is important information for everyone to know if new patterns of behavior develop, old behavior surface, or if behavior gets worse. Being easy to contact is also important. So if a parent calls, texts, or emails and doesn't get a reply for a week, this will help break down the working relationship. Being resourceful to parents is also a great way to improve trust. For our wonderful therapists and analysts out there, offering to do research instead of asking parents to do the research is an incredibly nice touch for building relationships. Please know also that you are appreciated and needed always, as well as you parents. So, some resources, folks. Here are some great resources that I have used, continue to use. First, on the top of the page is the Association for Positive Behavior Support. If you're not a member, become a member. They have valuable information. They host annual conferences, and they do monthly workshops, webinars that are extremely important information. There's also the PBIS website. There's the Home and Community Behavior Support, Positive Behavior Support on Facebook. If you haven't joined them, join them. They share tons of information. Everything is free. It's incredibly intuitive. There's a lot of great experts involved there as well. My site has and captures the entire series for using the Positive Behavior Support Plan at home. I will be also sharing forms that I used and everything I did, and everything is there. So if you want to access the forms I've used, you can visit our website as well as this will be uploaded for the Family Cafe conference. And lastly, which is also one of my favorites, is the Parenting with Positive Behavior Support Guide. This is done by Dr. Mimi Heineman, who was extremely instrumental to our family. She was the first to really teach us about the positive behavior support process, all the principles, everything we needed to know that was missing because we really were doing it wrong for so long, which is why Richie's behavior escalated to the seriousness that it did. But this book, I promise you, will help as well. So if you get a chance, check it out, all of these resources. And please contact and follow us. If you have any questions, you can reach me. That's my email right there, Christine@sensoryfriends.com. And sensoryfriends.org is a disability directory if you want to check that out. Please feel free to follow us. And if you have any questions, you can most certainly contact me, and I'd be more than happy to help and answer anything you need. Anyway, hope you all have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of the conference.